Welcome to Distress to Joyful, Bailey's Way. I'm your host, Bailey Reber, here to enlighten you and the rest of the world about one of the most misunderstood mental disorders out there, bipolar disorder. Each week, we're going to learn more about my personal journey with the disorder while leaving you enriched with new information on how you can help better yourself as well as those around you. Okay, y'all. So remember how in episode 11 I said that we discussed bipolar disorder and recreational drug use this week? While we're definitely going to touch on that topic, we're also going to focus on some of the stigmas around bipolar disorder. Actually, we're going to just hit some of the stigmas, and next week we're going to do a round 2 and touch on some more of them. There are so many, and I feel that it's important not only to address the stigmas, but also to dive a little bit deeper as to why society thinks that way and what the actual realities of the disorder are. So to put that in more modern terms, a verbal Instagram versus reality, if you will. Hopefully at least one of you out there got that and is laughing hysterically. I am cheesy sometimes. I mean, what can I say? Alright, and the last thing before we get started. If any of y'all have any questions that you'd like for me to answer, dude, ask away. I've got Instagram and Facebook, both under the names Distress to Joyful Bailey's Way. You can find me on either of those and just shoot me a message with your questions. I'd be delighted to answer them here on the show. These links will be found in the show notes, but I'm also going to give my specific usernames out at the end of the show, so let's just go ahead and get started, okay? I'm going to be totally real with you. A lot of the research that I found in regards to recreational drug use in those diagnosed with bipolar disorder was very similar to that I found about bipolar disorder and alcohol abuse, which, if you remember from previous episodes, I mentioned that alcohol is classified as a drug by the FDA. So that kind of makes sense, eh? I'm going to read a paragraph from an article taken directly from Laguna Treatment Hospital's website. And this treatment center is an addiction treatment center, by the way. The article reads, both addiction and bipolar disorder can interfere with a person's ability to perform day-to-day tasks and function normally in society. Homelessness, financial problems, work issues or unemployment, relationship difficulties, troubles with the law and legal entanglements, and suicide attempts are all possible complications of both bipolar disorder and addiction. Doing drugs in childhood or adolescence before the brain is fully developed may have lasting consequences. It is associated with an increased risk of substance abuse disorders developing later and may also be linked to an increased risk for later development of other mental health disorders. And that's according to the NIDA, or the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Also, having a mental illness as a child or an adolescent can increase the risk of drug use later and substance use disorder development. Wow, that was a lot, and also I hope y'all are not catching the slurriness, but again, if you remember previously, Invisalign, slurry mouth, sorry about it, it'll be fixed one of these days. Alright, but I am not the Reagans, and I am not here to preach a just say no campaign to you guys, but the war on drugs and the problems with substance abuse are so insanely bad, y'all. Like, scary bad. And the more research I do and the more documentaries I watch, the more I come to realize that picking up recreational drugs, hell, even prescription drugs or alcohol even, like, it can create an enormous amount of negative consequences for years to follow. Years, guys. And, okay, so raise your hand if you've seen the Netflix series Narcos. Go on. I'm sure most of y'all have seen at least one of the episodes from either the Colombia series or the Mexico Focus series. Don't be shy. Yeah, I see you there in the back. While this series is dramatized, the majority of the events in it actually happened. If you haven't seen it, I'll be sure to post a link in the show notes for you to read up on it. That way you can decide if you want to add it to your binge watch list while we continue to wait out this everlasting pandemic. So basically, the production of cocaine in the Americas has grown significantly because once you pick it up, the chemical compounds of the drug alter your brain, and that causes you to become married to it. The addictive properties are so incredibly strong that you feel as if you can't live without it, and boom, an addiction is now born. And the biggest concern with addictions is that once they start, it is incredibly hard to rid them from the body. And, more importantly, the person addicted has to actually want to get better in order for the treatments to actually work. So, on that note, let me make something very clear. If someone you know struggles with an addiction, first of all, I just want you to realize and know that it is not your fault. They chose to pick up whatever they're using, and that choice had nothing to do with you. But what I really, and I mean really, want you to understand is that no matter how many times you ask them to stop or beg them to give it up, they cannot and will not do so until they decide that that is what they want to do. And, I've heard parents say things like, I just don't understand why they won't stop. It's destroying their life, and it's also starting to take down the families too. Why won't they just stop? And they won't stop because they don't want to stop, because of the underlying issue of that first use altering their chemical makeup of the brain. And that may sound harsh or shitty or not be the answer that you want to hear, but that's the reality of it. And what you can do at that point is lead by example and not only live a healthy lifestyle, but also encourage them into one too. Like, invite them to go exercise or invite them to dinner and make sure there's a healthy meal prepared. Those are just a couple examples, but you get the point. Another option is to cut them off from any financial support or whatever else you help them with, and use that as leverage to get them into some kind of treatment program. So by cutting them off financially, that is going to be a very tough decision for you to make, and it won't be a fun one, that's for sure. And you're probably wondering how that's going to help. But if you think about it, everybody needs some form of financial support. I mean, they either go to work and make money themselves, or they live with a spouse or a relative who makes the money for them, but either way, you have to have money to survive. And if you're constantly supplying an addictee with money and they're just turning around and using it for substances, that's that's like a dead end road right there. Like, nothing's going to change unless you physically cause something to change. So cutting them off from their source of finances means they're going to have to find another way to get what they want, or you can hopefully use that as leverage to get them into a facility for treatment. And again, I know that sounds rough and that sounds tough and like something you'd never want to do. Like, you never want to cut off a sister or an uncle or I don't know, whoever could be dealing with this. But by not cutting them off, you are enabling them to continue on with their bad habits. I'm not going to go too much deeper on this. That's not really the focus of today's episode. But just know that that is sometimes a route that has to be taken. And just remember that sometimes the right choices in life are not easy and they're not fun. Like, paying my rent instead of using that money for a shopping spree. That isn't exactly fun, but the right thing to do would be to pay my rent so that I have a place to live, so that I can store all those clothes, right? Alright, well, I hope that kind of lightened up the mood a little bit, because it went from happy-go-lucky to, wow, real serious. Now let's move forward with some stigmas, because this is going to be a little bit tough as well to kind of digest. So, I'm going to start out by reading you the definition of the word stigma. And it is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. So in this instance, it's in regards to a quality of a particular group of people. And we're going to hit 2 big ones today, and then we'll get into more of them next week. Capiche? Try not to overwhelm you here. Now, the first one. People with bipolar disorder are scary and not like us. This one pisses me off so much, y'all. Oh gosh, I mean, people seem to associate the words mania or manic with the word maniac. And these are not the same thing, guys. They're not. So here are the definitions. A maniac is a person exhibiting extreme symptoms of wild behavior, especially when violent and dangerous. Mania is mental illness marked by periods of great excitement or euphoria, delusions, and overactivity, also cited as excessive enthusiasm or desire. You see how the definition of mania has nothing along the lines of violence in it? You know, I honestly think that somewhere way back when, somebody read the word manic, but was slightly uneducated and instead said maniac, which sent a domino effect of people believing the wrong thing. It's one letter off. It could have easily happened. I mean, who knows? That's just me, using my brain to come up with your creative way as to why the hell people would think that, us dealing with a manic phase are maniacs. But yes, I do want to mention that, during manic episodes, there are some people who do go a little off the edge and go a little bit more wild. Now, I myself, the most wild I ever did was binge drinking, spending too much money, like shopping sprees, and acting out sexually. Like those were like the 3 biggest things besides overactivity and just the small ones. I've not known anybody to get violent during it. It may occasionally happen with the anger, but I don't think it happens in the extremities that people think it does. And we have the media to blame for that. They are phenomenal at spreading misinformation out to the masses. So then there's Carla Doherty, author of the book Less Than Crazy, Living Fully with Bipolar 2, who said, "We'll hear of someone committing a horrible crime and the words has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder in the past is invariably somewhere in the paragraph or of the speaker's script." What Carla Doherty is saying is that on crime shows, they'll be like, a murder happened or whatever, some like super bad crime. And the suspect who's called in, like they're like, this guy probably did it, blah, blah, blah. He's under investigation. They'll say something like that. That suspect has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder in the past. And when they say things like that, people now start to get the concept of, oh, so people with bipolar disorder act out crazy like this and they do horrific things and commit these crimes. Point being is that the media will twist things up sometimes so badly that because there's not enough people out there speaking the truths, everybody just believes the media because they have nothing else to go off of. So if you've ever seen the Netflix movie, it's called The Silver Linings Playbook. It's got what's her name from The Hunger Games. Oh gosh, what is her name? She's like super famous. Jennifer Lawrence. That's who. She stars in it. And then some other guy who's pretty famous, who I don't really care for, he also stars in it too. That's besides the point. But this is a first-hand example of the media badly and wrongly displaying the characters that are said to have bipolar disorder. And the link for this movie will also be in the show notes so you can kind of check it out. But the main character has bipolar disorder, and they make him seem like a complete nut job. A complete nut job. And they also make it seem like he was normal until he got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and then all of a sudden he's like this crazy psychopath. So watching this, it not only pissed me off, but it also really hurt. Just seeing how they portrayed somebody with bipolar disorder on the big screen for the masses to digest. I mean, it pissed me off because it was just completely unreasonable how this character was acting due to his mental state. And it hurt because while watching it, I knew that this misrepresentation of the disorder was now going to be what people thought of when they look at me. And after seeing this movie, I instantly connected with the thought that people will think I'm crazy, unreasonable, and that I do irrational things. I act out violently, and I am unstable just because this one character on TV was. When the reality is, we're not like that. The majority of us diagnosed are normal, everyday human beings that have ups and downs just like everyone else. Only ours are just a lot more intense and occasionally less stable than the vast majority of people out there. That's it. Some of us struggle with substance abuse or alcohol abuse as well, but those not diagnosed with bipolar disorder are also at risk for struggling with substance abuse or alcohol abuse as well. So it's not just us. It's not just us who goes through that. So that's one thing. So keep that in mind. But this movie right here is one of the many, many reasons that I stayed in hiding about my disorder for so damn long. If you've never seen it and you choose to watch it, please hear me loud and clear. It is a misrepresentation. The end. The end. Again, everybody experiences bipolar disorder differently, but I have yet to see anyone firsthand act like him, and I also have not acted like that either, so. Alright, on to stigma number 2. People with bipolar disorder can't be successful. So being an Enneagram 8, hearing this makes me want to punch the person who said it right in the face. In an article found on psychcentral.com, therapist Colleen King states, one of the most damaging myths is that people with bipolar disorder are unreliable and incapable of functioning at a high level. The author that I mentioned earlier, Kayla Doherty, says, people with bipolar disorder are seen as loose cannons and are thought to not be hired due to that. These perceptions make people with the illness believe that they can't achieve their goals. That statement right there is the reason why only one of all of the employers I've ever had knows about my bipolar disorder. Guys, I was scared that if I told somebody about that they would not only look at me differently, of course, but also that they would find a reason to let me go. Or if I called in sick one day, they would think it had something to do with being unstable. And the thought of telling an employer that I had bipolar disorder just made me feel so uneasy. And even when you fill out some online applications, they ask you if you have any disabilities. And it's not all places that do this, but there's been a lot of applications I've put in, and, it's like they ask you your race, and you can say, other, or I don't want to mention, or whatever. And then they ask you if you have any disabilities, or if you're a veteran or whatever. And on the disabilities list, they have things like, blindness, cancer, some of the main big ones that could hinder somebody from being hired. But bipolar disorder is also on that list. And every time I come across one of those, I hesitate. Because I'm like, I don't consider bipolar disorder a disability. I do not whatsoever. I mean, I'm for my age, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but for being 26, I have already accomplished a lot, and I will accomplish a lot more over the next couple of decades. My bipolar disorder has been a slight hindrance in past occasions, but for the most part, it has not disrupted anything. I mean, to call bipolar disorder a disability just really upsets me, because when I think of disability, it means I am unable to function and perform at 100% because of this. Like, think about it. If you're blind, there's a lot of things you're not able to do because you can't see. You can't drive a car. You can't paint a picture. Like, there's a lot of things that you can't do. That's a disability. That's a disadvantage. Bipolar disorder, I don't think there's a disadvantage to it. Yeah, the depression sucks, and getting down there does suck, but there's a huge population of Americans who suffer from general depression, which is half of what bipolar disorder is. The other half is, the highs and, the mania, which, I'm not going to lie, those are some of my most productive times ever. Like, I told you earlier, it says over activities. Like, you overdo things and you just do a lot. And I get a lot accomplished. If anything, this is more of an advantage. I get so much more done with all the energy that I have during those times. Yeah, there might be a little setback in the depressive episodes, but if you can get to a point where you can effectively manage this, you can get those depressive episodes to shrink and shrink and shrink to where they're almost, I wouldn't say almost gone, but I've gotten to the point where they don't hit me like they used to. I can still function just like everybody else can. I actually function higher than most people. So honestly, for people to think that those with bipolar disorder are incapable of functioning at a high level, the fact that people actually think that is very sad. It's very sad. And that's another reason why I have chosen to come out with this podcast, you guys, because there's so many misconceptions. And if somebody doesn't start speaking out about it, it's not going to change. So, here we are. Something else that angers me about the thought that people with bipolar disorder can't be successful is that right there is a limiting belief. Those who think that way, who think that we can't be successful, they are using that belief as a way to limit us. It's like they don't want people with bipolar disorder to be successful for whatever reason. I don't know. Again, being an Enneagram 8, if you don't know what that is, look it up. I don't like being limited. I really, really don't. But for years, guys, even I fell for this, and I believed this lie because so many people around me believed it that I thought that it must be true. And that is absolute bullshit, y'all. If anyone ever tries to tell you that you can't achieve something, just shrug off that statement, walk away, and proceed to prove them wrong. Mic drop. This goes out there for anyone, by the way, not just those of us who are diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but if anyone out there listening, if somebody comes up to you and tries to tell you that you are incapable of doing something, that is because they themselves are either incapable of doing it, or they just believe that they aren't capable of it and they're insecure. They're insecure because if you achieve it, that makes them feel bad because they think that they can't achieve it. And it's a really awful, toxic go around what that is. But please note that insecure people will try to keep you grounded down on their little level, while those who are confident in who they are will help to lift you up. I'm going to say that again because that was just so damn good. I feel like I just need to repeat it. Insecure people will try to keep you grounded down on their little level, while those who are confident in who they are will help lift you up. And it's written somewhere that you are a combination of the 5 people that you hang out with the most. So I want you to take a look at your group, your little inner circle, and the 5 people that you hang out with most. I want you to kind of evaluate who they are and how you feel when you're in their presence. What I'm trying to do right now is try to help you understand that if you continue to hang around with insecure people, all they will do is try to hold you back. But instead, surround yourself with those who are so confident in who they are that it's not only contagious, but also that because these people will want you to be successful and they will do whatever they can to help you with that. And guys, just remember that success comes in many forms, and no matter what it is that you want to do, I firmly believe that if you work hard enough, you can achieve it. All right, well, we're going to stop right there for today. And we'll go over more of the social stigmas in next week's episode. But if you enjoy the show, leave a review. Let others know what you think and why they should be listening in too. Also, be sure to follow Distressed to Joyful _ Bailey's Way on Instagram. And you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/distressedtojoyful.baileysway. And then the website for the show notes is going to be What Is Hey Bales Doing? So that's the word what is, and then hey, so HEYBAILS doing.wordpress.com. So be sure to send over your questions to any of these 3 sites, and I will be more than happy to answer them on the show. And dude, y'all, don't be shy. I have talked about my sex life. I have talked about my struggles with alcoholism. I have talked about so many different things that I'm an open book, and I will be happy to answer your questions. And I'm also aware that a good number of you who are listening don't actually have the disorder, but you know somebody who does. So keep in mind that, a Q&A with me is a really great way to get an answer to something that you don't understand, yet are not comfortable enough to go straight to the source. You feel me? I'll answer 1 question a week, so the quicker you send yours over, the faster you'll get an answer. But until next time, take it easy, stay grateful, and be joyful.